Hey everyone, real quick, if you're interested in booking private lessons with me, you can contact me through my website at breenmusiclessons.com, link in the description and the pinned comment. All right, so let's talk about these infamous weird chords in Interstate Love Song by Stone Temple Pilots. So we have this interesting thing going on where people get really caught up in the chords themselves. They hear all these different weird layers and harmonic content, and they kind of miss the forest from the trees. And really what we're trying to hear is an interesting texture, but a basic movement of notes going chromatically lower in pitch to a specific target, and then another target that gives us final resolution. What I mean by that is we start in C sharp minor, and then from that point, varying degrees of tension until we get to an A suspended 2. And then finally, ultimate resolution on the E major. But to spice things up, what we're hearing is chromatic tension going from the C sharp ultimately to that A, and then finally to the E. That's the idea. The idea is simplistic. Now, what gets really, really tricky is the chords that they've decided to use to add harmonic content to all of this stuff. We have a C sharp minor, which is probably the most basic thing you're going to hear in this part, other than the A sus2. From there, they take a walk down a half step. Now, you might start thinking, well, what is this chord if the C is the root note or the tonal center? But I think that's the wrong way to think about it. If you look at it that way, then you have to come up with some weird name for this chord where it's a minor 6. So you have the C, and then you have the minor 6 here, and then you have the C again, and then you have a minor 3rd. So I guess you could look at it, if you're assuming that C is the tonal center, as a C minor flat 6. But like I said, I think that's actually the wrong way to look at it. What I'm hearing is a triad, a G sharp triad. One of the notes in the G sharp triad is a C. So the C is now just the lowest pitch in the chord voicing. So an easier way, and probably a more accurate way to think about it, is a G sharp with C in the bass. Putting all this together, you still get that feel of moving down chromatically, but the C is no longer the bass or the tonal center of the chord. So once again, in my opinion, the way to think about this is a C sharp minor going to a G sharp major with a C in the bass. Now the third chord in is one of the funkier chords for sure. If you try to look at the B as the root note, you're going to come up with some interesting combinations of intervals. You're going to see a flat 5th right here between the 2nd fret on the A string and the 3rd fret on the D string. And then a double flat 7 if you start to think of it with like a diminished point of view, because you see the flat 5th, so you might think, all right, this is going to be a diminished chord. So you have a root, a flat 5th, a double flat 7. But then, again, if you're thinking about B as the root note, this last note, your 3rd finger being on the 2nd fret of the B string, that interval is a regular, it's a major 9. So you don't even get the full diminished sound because you need a flat 3rd or a minor 3rd in there to give you a complete, fully diminished 7th chord. So if you're looking at it from this point of view, you have a root note of B, a flat 5th, a double flat 7, and a 9. I guess that could be fine, but I think another way to look at it again is to not think about B as the root note of the chord. I think it sounds more like they're trying to go for a C dominant 7 sound with B in the bass. So this is a third inversion of a C sharp 7. That's one way to voice a C sharp 7. What you notice, all of the notes are still in this shape. So let's just say if I wanted to play it with that C sharp 7 voicing in particular, you would start to hear how it is similar. It's not completely different from the sound we hear. But because that B is in the C sharp 7, they're using that B as a leading tone to continue this theme of chromatically moving down by half steps. And then the final weird chord is not that weird compared to all the other ones. It is an A sharp or a B flat half diminished, or a minor 7 flat 5. Still weird, but it's a chord you hear diatonically in any major or minor key. Does it belong there diatonically in the key? No, but again, the whole point of this is to help you feel this tension of moving chromatically in half steps. So it's an appropriate choice for what they're trying to do and the voice leading effect that it gives you. A lot of tension, leading finally to the A sus2. So the next question is, how would you practice this stuff? These chords can be very, very foreign to you if you've never done these kind of things before. What I would actually suggest to do is only do 2-note chords, 2-note versions of these shapes, something like this. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off with a power chord, basically a power chord fragment off that C sharp minor. I want to continue that bass line, that movement of the chromatic half steps. 3rd fret on the A string, 6th fret on the D string with my pinky. So the fingering will remain consistent even though I'm doing only the lowest 2 pitches. Even for this one, because I know eventually I'm going to fill in with the full chord shape, I would try to stay consistent with that fingering. Middle finger, 2nd fret A string, pinky, 3rd fret D string. And then again, a 2-note fragment of ultimately what I want to work up to is the half diminished shape. So 1st finger, 1st fret A string, ring finger, 2nd fret D string. And then you can play the full A sus2. After that feels very comfortable, then I would start to slowly add in the full shapes. Since there's so much demand on your left hand for shapes that you've probably never done before, or at least not done in that combination, I wouldn't even worry about the rhythm on the right hand. I would keep it very steady. Maybe even whole notes or quarter notes if you want to try it, but wait until you can really do that stuff comfortably, and then you can add in the full picking pattern, which involves some dead notes and some percussive elements to it.